Hello, Johann.
Hey Joe, it's great
Good
to be
see
back
you,
with
man.
you.
What's happening?
Yeah, good. We're just saying before we went on camera that I've made a note to myself that says talk slow, talk American, because although I spent about half the year here, we British people, there's a reorientation where you suddenly realise. I was once in an IHOP in Cactus, Arizona, and I was saying to the woman, right, like, I'll have some pancakes, whatever it was, and she kept looking at me going, what? What? And after about literally 3 minutes, she goes, do you speak English? I was like, my people fucking invented it, right? But no one was there to laugh at my sad joke because they didn't understand what the fuck I was saying.
Arizona's a strange place. I really love Arizona. There's great parts, like Phoenix is amazing. Tucson's a great place too, but it's a Wild West sort of a state. It's one of those weird holdover states that have a lot of weird old school laws. Like I think you could just walk around with a gun.
Yeah, you can. My main experience in Phoenix was, in Arizona, in fact, was going out with a group of women who were made to go out on a chain gang, wearing T-shirts saying I was a drug addict, while members of the public mock them and jeer at them, right? Because I was wrote this book about the war on drugs. And
Is that Joe Arpaio?
Yeah, Sheriff Arpaio, no longer sheriff now, thankfully. But yeah, and it was, Arizona is a deeply weird place.
It's weird. A lot of really nice people. But it's 150,000 degrees.
Yeah. Well, literally almost nobody lived there until air conditioning was invented, right?
Right.
And you see, I once made a horrendous mistake, in fact, in Phoenix, where I had to walk somewhere and I could see on the map it was like a mile away. So I was like, oh, just walk, it's fine. And I get like halfway there and people are literally stopping their cars going, are you okay? Because the only reason anyone would ever walk in Phoenix was basically if your car had broken. It didn't even occur to them. I might have actually just chosen to walk, right?
Well, plus you're so white.
I am literally the whitest person.
You must have been beat like a tomato.
Yeah, I used to go out with a Brazilian who would literally just look at my body and laugh and be like, you're so white. How can a human be so white? Right? I never have a nice color. Like I'm either this albino color or red, right? There's no rich brown hue that ever, none of my ancestors, they're Scottish and Swiss, so they never saw the sun, right? None of my ancestors.
My friend Jamie was over at my house once, and he's not this friend Jamie, a different friend Jamie, who's British as well. And my daughter, who was at the time, I think she was like 10 or something like that. She goes to my wife. She goes, "Mommy, he's so white." And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "No, like he's white like paper." So from then on, Jamie became Jamie White like paper.
That's a very accurate description of my lack of pigment. It's cruelly true.
It's funny that how much we appreciate the English accent, though. The English accent is like one of the best tools for selling things to very gullible Americans.
British people benefit from constant positive discrimination in the United States, right? It's like having a 10-inch dick, just having a British accent. People go, oh my God, you got an accent. And it's like, all humans have accents. I've just got, like slightly different one.
But it's a cherished one. We really enjoy it. It makes you feel like you're more sophisticated, you're more well-read. You're more aware of the world.
I mean, I just am sophisticated and well-read. Anyway,
you're lucky.
But you get this constant, constantly people ascribing to you much better qualities than you actually have.
But what does it work in reverse? Like in England, what is the reaction to American accents? It's mostly disgust, right?
I don't know. There's a mixture. Americans, I always think like the relationship of Britain and America is like one of those police mirrors, because we grow up constantly looking at the United States, right? We're constantly staring through. We are immersed in American culture.
Right.
But when Americans look back at us, they're just seeing like a reflection of themselves. I mean, Americans watch Downton Abbey and know about like the Queen or whatever, but there isn't that two-way dialogue that there is so it's a slightly weird. So I think we feel very American, right? And I spend half the year here, and every now and then you come up against these deep cultural differences that you're just like, oh fuck, okay, right, this is really not my culture, right? And it's those moments of disorientation are really strange.
Like, give me one for an example.
Well, there's a question that Americans ask all the time that I have literally never heard a European ask, right? It's the question, what's your story? Right?
Oh,
every American, you can go to the most crusty right-wing person coming out of Mar-a-Lago or a kid in West Baltimore, and you can say, what's your story? And they'll have an answer. The only context I can imagine a British person saying, what's your story? Would be in a police interrogation. It would be an extremely hostile question. What's your story? Right? It would be you just wouldn't ever say it, right? Americans narrativize their lives in a way I absolutely love. And as a journalist who writes books about like depression and addiction, and you want people to talk about their lives, it's an unbelievable gift to you, right? That people will tell you. I remember once being on a bus in Mississippi and sitting next to a woman, and within 5 minutes of chatting to her, she told me about like her 2 miscarriages, how her mother hated her. And I thought, if we were Swiss, where my dad's from, you wouldn't tell me this until we got married. And maybe not even then, right? So there's a level of candor and storytelling among Americans. It's one of the best things about this fucked up and amazing place, right? That I just love. And there's something about, there's a kind of narrative openness that's very different about this place than Europe, anywhere in Europe.
Now, when you talk to people in England, you guys don't have the same level of not social media, but of reality television. You have some, like Big Brother, but you don't have it to the extent that we have it here, right?
Yeah, it hasn't. Well, I mean, your country has literally been taken over by reality television, right? We have a reality television president. No, it hasn't conquered the whole culture in that way.
Well, he's a reality television president, but he's sort of a game show host president. Like, that's how I used to describe myself when I was hosting Fear Factor. They're like, you host a reality show? I'm like, sort of. It's a game show. It's just a fucked up game show. It's like, and Trump was hosting a game show, essentially, right? It was a contest. It wasn't like Keeping Up with the Kardashians. That's a true reality show because there's literally nothing going on other than these people's lives and whatever orchestrated bullshit they put in to make it more interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. I think that's quite persuasive.
But I think that's part of the thing that I was getting to about Americans always wanted to give you their narrative. They always want to give you the story of their life. So when someone says, what's your story? They already have it ready. Yeah. You know, because it's almost like we feel like we're in some sort of a small television show all the time or some sort of small production. It's like almost a part of who we are.
Yeah, every American thinks they're the star of their own movie, right? And I forget who said this, but someone realized, sometimes in life you realize you're just the extra, right? Yeah. You're in the corner of the shot, right?
Right.
And I think that's true, and I think that's not as true of British people, or I think there's certain, how to put it, like, there's a certain kind of self-deprecation you're taught as a British person. You're taught, and I had to kind of unlearn it living here. So what would be examples? I forget where I read this story, so maybe it's not true, but I remember reading it years ago. So we had these terrible subway bombs in 2005. I'm sure you remember. 4 young British men go onto the London Underground and murder, I think it was over 50 people. And 2 weeks later, another group of jihadis tried to do the same thing. But they hadn't built the bombs very well. So they go down into the subway and there's a loud bang, but it doesn't connect with the detonator. So there's a loud bang, but it doesn't actually blow everyone up. But obviously people freak the fuck out, as you can imagine, right? And I forget... Maybe this is a story that someone told that wasn't factually true, but I think it reveals something very, very something about our British character. So if I remember rightly, 3 of the bombers escape on the day and are caught like a few hours later, and one of them's caught at the time, right? And someone, I think it was an off-duty fire officer in the story, chases after the guy for ages, while everyone else is running the fuck away. And he catches the guy and he throws him to the ground. And what he said to him was that the off-duty fire officer says to the attempted suicide bomber, "You rude, rude man." Right? And what I love about that is like the idea that suicide bombing is just like bad manners, right? It's like, it's just impolite, right? Or even a better example, which is true, it was reported at the time, definitely, was during the riots we had in 2011. In London, there was one place, I forget where it is, where they broke into a luxury goods store and they could only make, it was a very strong window, so they could only make a hole in the corner of the window. And it was caught on the security cameras that the rioters formed a line to go in and loot the store, right? That's how deep the idea of like queuing and making a line is in British culture. Even in a riot, we're like, oh no, I think you were before me, right? And it's like I've got a Chilean friend, Isabel Banque, who lives in London, and she, like, if I remember her phoning me after she read that, I'd be like, "You're fucking English, you don't know how to riot. This is a riot, you're forming a queue. What's wrong with you people?" Right?
You guys don't have Black Friday sales, do you?
No, they've just started, and yeah, it's an unfortunate business.
That might be the end of your humility.
Exactly, we're not going to make it. We survived the Nazis. We're not fucking surviving Black Friday, right?
There's something about those deals when people get that bargain and then they open that door, ready, go, and people pile through. All humanity gets tossed aside.
It gives you an insight into the fucking financial desperation of ordinary ordinary Americans, right?
It's a little bit of that, but it's also the competitive nature of those things where you're trying to grab the few remaining items that are 25% off, and you've been saving for this TV for 6 months, and there it is right in front of you, and you charge, and people are fighting left and right. It's awful.
It's
just a terrible way for people to, to interact with each other.